Ahead of SONA, we rub our hands in anticipation as to what Cyril Ramaphosa, the president, will have to say in terms of policy and the way forward. We're going to cross now to my colleague Bulelani Philip, who's standing by.
Well, thank you so much, Nompu. Welcome back again. We are here in Parliament in the precinct in anticipation of what the President Cyril Ramaphosa will be making pronouncements on later this evening. Of course, on top of the agenda, the expectations are that he must make pronouncements on job creation, attracting investment, as well as stimulating the economy. Of course, earlier this year, he made commitments of ensuring that he goes on a drive to attract over $100 billion into the South African economy. We've heard reports that a quarter of that has already been committed. I'm now going to bring into this conversation Mr. Makwe Masilela from Makwe Fund Managers. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Of course, the president will be making a speech tonight under very difficult circumstances, a 3.2% contraction in the GDP. What would you expect him to make pronouncements on?
You know, like you said in your intro, it's a question of we know our problems, they're well documented, but now talking to the GDP itself, so far, fortunately, the numbers that we've seen from April, whether it was retail sales numbers, whether it was manufacturing numbers, they just confirmed that the slowdown that we've seen in the first quarter, it was not extended into the second quarter. But I think it's a question of we know what are the problems, he stated all that, we had all the jobs, investment summits, all the summits you can think of. He made many speeches, whether it was the January 8 statements or Siyanqoba rally or even their manifesto. Now it's a question of we just want to see concrete actions or programs talking to those problems, that this is exactly what we're going to be doing to be able to resolve all that. So it's a question of people who know their problems, that now, Mr. President, what is it exactly? You know, and I think South Africans, not just investors, South Africans like to see stuff like that that will implement X, Y, Z to be able to eradicate the following. So it's a question of actions, and actions with the right or reasonable timelines. And people are reasonable. We don't expect things to be done overnight, but it's a question of tell us exactly. Please don't repeat our problems. That's well documented.
Of course, he did make pronouncements on trying to attract investors into the country, holding an investment summit and a job summit, and there is also another job summit that is scheduled for later this year. Are those yielding results in your view?
You know, so far, yes, but I think we need to be careful, you know. Yes, you like to raise almost 1.4 trillion, you know, in rand terms, you know, over a period of 5 years. But, you know, you need economic growth that talk to your social policies. Because the question here, we want to improve the quality of life and, more importantly, make sure that the future is sustainable. And how do you do that? You need to make sure that your social policies talk to your economic policies. Because if you are not careful, you will end up having economic growth that is only benefiting a few. And you don't want a situation like that. So our social policies should also talk to economic policies, or they can even do it the other way around to say whatever social policy you are coming with, it must be a social policy that at the very same time will stimulate the economy. So because it's critical, because people need to improve their lives, and more importantly, your future has to be a sustainable one.
Of course, he's coming on a ticket of clean governance, and there's been a focus on the state-owned companies. What would you expect him to make pronouncements on with regards to perhaps maybe the issue that have been raised around the issues of bailouts? Would you expect him to make an extension to those bailouts, or just curb it and nip it in the bud?
You know, it's a question of we need to maybe come to an agreement. Do we need those state-owned enterprises? Yes, we do. Must they be privatized? The question is not necessarily. Why don't you apply the very same principles that the private sector applies when they run those institutions, meaning get the right people to do the right job? Because keep on putting in money is not going to help, because now they'll come back again and need another bailout. So it's a question of, if you give them something, make sure that whoever is in charge, they are capable to be able to deliver. And people keep on saying that maybe these things have to be privatized, or the private sector can do a better job. But wait, can't you just apply the very same private sector principles while those institutions are still owned by the government? And I think you can. We have had success stories. We had the likes of Telkom. They've been very successful. They continue to be successful. successful. Government owns almost 40% of the likes of telecom. So it's a question of getting capable people to be able to implement. Yes, they're drowning in debt. Yes, they need some cash. But the question is, make sure that when you put in that cash, the guys, they'll be able to turn themselves around. Look at the case that we just had with the likes of SAA. We don't need cases like that. Look at what is happening with ESCOM. We don't need stories like that. So make sure that you put capable people. And do we have the likes of that? By all means, we do have people, capable people to be able to turn around these institutions.
Talking about ESCOM, I'm sure it's going to be an elephant in the room conversation. Of course, it poses a high risk to the economy, and of course, it's been drowning in debt, close to $500 million. Would you expect him to actually extend a bailout for them in order to remain sustainable?
Unfortunately, it doesn't have much of a choice. Whatever they committed when they made the budget speech is not sufficient, and we know since then they've been crying, looking for money. Yes, we have to put in money, but make sure that whoever's going to be using those funds definitely is going to be turned around. And like you said, it's a very, very big elephant. That's the one that gave us that negative growth rate of 3.2 because it affected manufacturing, stuff like that. So we don't need stuff like that. To even hear when the ratings agencies, they have to make their announcement. One of the things that they continue to mention is that if ESCOM issues are not sorted out, then unfortunately our economy is not going anywhere fast.
Lastly, before I let you go, issues of policy certainty are also coming to the fore, especially around the issue of this land expropriation without compensation debate. Would you expect him to hold back on the pronouncements with regards to that in favor of attracting investments?
I think if he does that, holding back, then he'll continue with the uncertainty. I think it's a question of just pronounce, let's hear what is your story, because people or markets, they like certainty. Then we work around that, no matter how good or bad it is. But at least we know that this is your story, then people will find a way to work around that. So I think it's important, the sooner they pronounce on that, the better.
All right, Makwe Masilela from Makwe Fund Managers, obviously giving us an insight and analysis just around the issues of the economy. Of course, there's going to be a lot of talk around what the president is going to make pronouncements on with regards to job creation as well as stimulating the economy. Nompu, for now, we will cross back to you in studio.